Brand new horror movie in theaters this weekend. We're going to talk about it. It's the sequel to The Nun. Too Nun, Too Furious. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. It's not actually the sequel to The Nun. This movie is called Pray for the Devil. How dare you ask me to pray for the devil? Oh, it's got an E in it. Well, it's been a long day. Sister Anne believes she is answering a calling to be the first female exorcist, but who or what called her? In response to a global rise in demonic possessions, Anne seeks out a place at an exorcism school reopened by the Catholic Church. Until now, these schools have only trained priests in the rite of exorcism, but a professor recognizes Sister Anne's gifts and agrees to train her. She finds herself in a battle for the soul of a young girl who Sister Anne believes is possessed by the same demon that tormented her own mother years ago. Determined to root out this evil, she soon realizes that the devil has her right where he wants her. Ooh. This movie, for some reason, is rated PG-13 for violent and disturbing content, terror, thematic elements, and brief language. I'm not sure why this movie is not rated R, why the studio didn't want it to be rated R. But that being said, I'm watching this film thinking the entire time that it is rated R. You get some gruesome scenes, a lot of which involving this young girl, or our main character as a young girl, as she had to go through so many traumatic things growing up, turning what could be perceived from the outside looking in as an abusive mother type situation. But of course, this is a horror movie. That's not the case. Obviously, the abusive person is the possessed person, and that demonic entity is something that has maintained and continued on to this day, and our main character believes that he is back for her. Now, what is the context of all of this? How do we get from point A to point B? Well, it is a bit of a slower journey. She joins this group and realizes, and a lot of people around her realize, that she has a gift. And there's one example that we get where there is an exorcism performed, and she has a bit of a different way of operating, which allows her method to be just as effective, if not more so, in some cases. So clearly, you're going to have people looking down on her for that, but that's not as much the case in this movie, which I appreciate. It strays away from some of the more obvious story points you could have slid in there. Now, speaking of obvious story points and cliches and conventions, and it's a horror movie that I've been seeing trailers for months now, and I believe this movie even had a name change. So that's the kind of film that you don't anticipate to stand out as something that I've never seen before, and that's definitely the case. You're right. This movie relies on cliches and conventions and jump scares galore. Not necessarily jump scares that take their time to develop or don't really rely on sound effects and the score to elevate them and make them obvious as to when they are going to hit, but the more conventional type of jump scares. The jump scares that don't really take a lot of thought, and you get that type of feel throughout the movie. You also get the obviousness of where the plot is going. They're trying to do something right in the middle of the movie. I'm not going to say what it is, but they're setting it up thinking, and I can see the way the screenwriters' minds were going, oh, this is going to be a shock. No one's going to know that this is going to be a big plot point later on in the film. And as soon as that setup comes, I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is going to happen. And sure enough, and it's that obviousness within the script that bothered me all throughout this movie. Now, one thing that didn't bother me was our lead performance here. Some of the supporting performances, they're fine. Thankfully, there's not a performance here that drags the movie down. Often you get that in a horror film. Even the young girl, both young girls, the flashback version of Anne and Natalie, who is possessed in current day, they both do a nice job, especially Natalie, right? The chemistry is there with Sister Anne. Jacqueline Byers does a really nice job of creating a compelling character, working with the dialogue that she is given, getting us through some of the obviousness of the plot points and into those integral moments to where she's having to deal with these demons. And it is a movie that doesn't take demonic possessions lightly. There are full scenes devoted to going through what an exorcism entails. It's also something, anytime I see it in a movie, that is going to give me chills, regardless of if I'm responding to the film or not. So imagery throughout the film that will occasionally get you, and some of the special effects, some of the practical effects are actually really well done. There are some moments that are unintentionally funny, though. One involving this young girl in Natalie. She gets possessed in a scene, multiple scenes, but one in particular where she's going up a wall, and things are happening on a ceiling, and it's supposed to be scary, and people in the room are treating it like it's scary, but it kind of looked funny, and I was giggling, and other people in the audience, they were giggling, and I'm like, it just doesn't look all that good. And those were the moments in the film to where I could tell the budget was a bit lower, and sure, they have to work with what they were given, but did it have to look this silly and ridiculous? And that moment was kind of ridiculous. There are other moments as the film goes that are ridiculous. There are also really intense scenes involving exorcisms and possessions that work extremely well. It's just the narrative surrounding those scenes, how it all culminates, and then at the end, you're getting something really cool happening between two characters. But the way this problem is solved, or not solved, not to give anything away, was just so cliche. So like, you're going that route when the movie is so dark in moments, and then we get this, and I'm like, yeah, I've seen thousands of other, not that much, many other horror movies do the exact same thing with their ending, and it just felt like this was on track to do something different, but it just didn't. Before I give you my score, are you watching this one in the theaters? If you enjoyed this review and you want to drop a like down below and subscribe, we're doing plenty more reviews this weekend. Lots of movies and TV shows to talk about. Pray for the Devil features a solid dynamic between our lead and this young possessed girl, but the filmmaking falls flat here. The jump scares are conventional, the twists are obvious, and the finale is underwhelming. Part of me did expect it to be worse, and again, some of the performances here and some of the imagery did work. I'm still going to go 44% with my score, but I do believe horror enthusiasts could at least get a kick out of this film, even though it does feel like every other movie that comes out this time of the year. Like I said, it's The Nun 2. It's not The Nun 2, but it's kind of like The Nun. All right, see you guys.